Hey everyone, hope you're having a great Wednesday. Welcome to Ultimate Sports Talk. I'm Haley Outen, joined by Breaky CPK, and we're happy to have you here with us on another Wednesday afternoon talking Ultimate Rivals and, of course, what is going on in the world of sports. Breaky, how's it going?
It's going pretty good, to say the least, as there's my chime going off from my front door. I apologize. Perfect timing right there. No, I'm excited to be here, though, as always. Another week in the books as far as sports go, and it was quite the crazy week, to say the least, especially when it comes to the NFL. And then, of course, the NBA is having an exciting week throughout this week. Monday, of course, started trading deadline or trading opening. Tonight's the draft, and then Friday, free agency takes place. We would have previewed that a little bit last week as well. So definitely plenty to talk about, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot going on this week. And after what was sort of a whole summer without having any sports at all, it's hard to kind of handle when there's all these things going on at once when you have the NFL and the NBA. But it's a good problem to have. So we're getting back into the swing of things in the sports world, and it feels pretty good. Feel free to join in with us in the chat here on Twitch as well as over on Discord. We would love to hear your thoughts and bring viewers into the conversation as much as possible. And Breaky, so we've been starting off these streams with a poll these last few weeks. And today we have one that I would love to get some input on from those viewing with us. And as you mentioned, a pretty crazy week in the NFL. And this weekend, we happened to circle 4 different games that could have some pretty serious implications when it comes to the playoffs.
Yeah, I actually saw a notice about this too. There was, and I think there's even a couple more, but these are 4 games at least that stand out definitely more than the others. But in terms of, you have 2 teams going at it that at least have 6 wins going into the game. And so here we are coming into week 10. Obviously, if you have 6 wins, really you're around that 6-3 record at the worst case scenario. So to say the least, this definitely is a pretty big week for some big matchups to start taking place and to start kind of spreading out a little bit within your division, specifically in a couple of these cases. So as you mentioned, in fact, let me pull it on screen right here to show for everyone. There we go. We got this poll that was also posted in chat. We have these 4 games in terms of which you are looking forward to the most. We have the Cardinals, the Seahawks, Ravens, Titans, the Chiefs, and the Raiders. Always a classic one there. And then Rams versus Bucks, of course. So those are the 4, and again, there's even still more on top of that, really, but these are the 4 that stood out the most and quite a bit on the line.
Well, maybe we let viewers chime in and cast their vote for which game they're looking forward to the most, and then maybe we'll bring that poll back at the end of the stream and we can give our thoughts as well, because I think you could certainly make a lot of arguments for all 4 games that actually kick off tomorrow night, so that should be a fun weekend. Moving on, let's talk Ultimate Rivals before we talk about the sports world. We like to start off these streams as well, giving our viewers some tips. And you can always head to our YouTube channel for a full playlist of tips as well. But this week, we're going to talk about Ultimates and the versatility and sport crossover in Ultimate Rivals. So, Breaky, when you're putting your 3v3 team together, what would be the advantage of putting a soccer and a hockey player as the 2 main players on your team?
So, as mentioned, again, you look at the 5 different sports that we represent. There's a couple things that come into play. One being the ultimate, the most important one, certainly the most obvious one, but there is also deking, the juking ability, and then there's technically the shot animation. Doesn't really have gameplay value there as far as difference, but it's, in my opinion, like the baseball one, for example, the crack of the bat, as I always go back to. It's fun to hear. But as far as soccer and hockey, so with the soccer sport, of course, you get arguably one of the best ultimates, if not the best ultimate in the game. The soccer balls spawn around the soccer player. She'll then eventually kick them and they go flying in all directions. If they can make connection with one of the 2 players on the ice on the other side, they get automatically knocked out. They're down for 10 seconds or whatever it is. You can also run at them with the soccer balls, and unless they get away from you, they're also, same thing is going to happen. So it's great for setting up what essentially should be a free goal, and could also be used in a defensive sort as well. So say if they activate some ultimate of theirs, whether it's like the hockey or baseball, whatever it may be, you could then counter with your soccer ultimate and try to knock them out before they take advantage of theirs. So that's where the soccer one definitely comes into play. The hockey is the Stanley Cup. You know, raising it in the air, you got to freeze people, and then you can slam it down. It's great for especially isolating one player and knocking them out. If you find them clumped up, that's when you can really activate it. Happen to catch them both and then knock them both out. But the deking of both soccer and hockey are actually very aggressive maneuvers forward. They do a little juke move, they go forward. Especially the hockey one, in my opinion, it's a fast spin usually, especially their deking is a little bit higher, and it can put you in a great spot to score. So again, all the sports definitely have their positives and one thing bring to the table, but certainly those are the what stand out for the soccer and the hockey one specifically.
So, Breaky, great insight. So, one step further, when you're looking at the soccer ultimate and the hockey ultimate, which one, in your opinion, is more lethal?
So I stand by. I've gotten stronger opinions more on different ultimates as well, but I still stand by the soccer ultimate. I think is the strongest one of the game overall. It's the what you can get out of it. It's you're pretty much not guaranteed, but you're likely to get both players knocked out when you activate it, and should be a free goal. So I would say the soccer.
Yeah, I think you said that last week. You said soccer ultimate can almost guarantee to lead you to a goal potentially.
Yeah, the one downside is it doesn't affect the goalie. So there, like for example, the baseball ultimate actually, if you hit the goalie with it, it'll actually make them red and makes the shot much easier to go in. So you still have to take a couple of shots, even with the soccer ultimate, to get the goal in. So again, maybe not guaranteed, but it really puts you in a good spot to do it.
Yeah, nothing is a guarantee, especially in fantasy football, where you and I had the chance.
Let's just skip
to
this
play
one.
each
Let's not talk about
other.
fantasy
I've
football.
been
Yeah.
looking forward to getting to this topic in particular, um, because I won.
Yeah,
I won
you
last
did.
week. So when I look back to oh, there we go.
Yep.
Here's the proof and the pudding here. I was able to. I'm creeping back up on you. I'm only a game behind you now, or a win behind you now. But last week, some surprises, I guess, on my team. When I was looking at it, would definitely be Antonio Gibson for Washington. He had a monster game at running back. Stephon Diggs. And then it was nice to see Juju get some action, got a touchdown. He had been a little quiet for me in fantasy the last couple of weeks, but it was nice to get the win. I'm inching closer to you, but this week I have a tall task, and hopefully everybody in the league is rooting for me this week because I am playing 9-1. Password is Taco this week.
Okay, he's still up there in first place. Yeah. I mean, go figure. The week that now Lamar Jackson, Juju Smith, they've been fairly disappointing when it comes to a fantasy perspective, as you know, of course, throughout the season. So go figure. They have the best games of the season against me. It just that's just how it happens sometimes, I guess. But I will say it was exciting. It actually came down to the Monday Night Football game. We both had action in the Monday night game. I had the kicker, Dan Bailey, I think is his name, the kicker for Minnesota, and yeah, you had the defense, the Bears defense. So I was down by 5 points at the time. Like, you know what, this is possible. Minnesota can blow out the Bears. Certainly is possible, but didn't happen. The Bears, as they tend to, their defense is pretty good. So the Bears won it for you in the end there, and the Bears yet again come to sting me a little bit. Of course, being in the same division as Detroit as well, and they even beat them earlier this season.
Detroit, though, it has to help ease the sting of this week's tough fantasy loss with that last minute field goal there to win it at the end. That was pretty nice.
Matt Prater, he is the MVP of the Lions. Man, it's not many teams can say their kicker is their best player on their team, but honestly, these last couple of years, and yes, we have Matthew Stafford, who's obviously a fantastic quarterback, but I think there's very good argument to be had that Matt Prater is our best player. And yeah, a 59-yard field goal, game-winning field goal, is pretty crazy in itself.
Was there any part of you that felt just a little bit bad that you couldn't even let Alex win his first official start back?
No, I didn't feel bad at all. Obviously, I wasn't rooting for anything to happen, but no, we're here to win. Damn it, this is football. You only get so many games, and I'll take any win we can get. But yeah, I mean, Alex Smith. God, he had I think they said he had his career high in yards, the most yards he's ever thrown in a football game. What? How did that happen? I guess he's back.
I have to be honest, like I wasn't rooting for Detroit. I was rooting for him, but if I'm being even more honest, I wasn't actually watching that game. So
Not many people were, I'm sure. It wasn't a highlight game of the week, that's for sure. But
yeah, there was a lot of other good things going on.
yeah.
All right, moving on. We're gonna talk a little bit more football as the stream goes on today, but big week for the NBA. We finally, it feels like it's coming back as we inch closer and closer to that start date a few days before Christmas. But NBA trade this week, the big one being Chris Paul going to Phoenix, and he's going to be a pretty nice compliment to Devin Booker.
Yeah, Chris Paul's really interesting for me in that I I don't necessarily I don't want to say I don't like him. It's just I don't necessarily appreciate his attitude sometimes, and some things he seems to get away with in games when it comes to playing a little more physical than he should be and complaining and whatever. But when it comes to gameplay itself, there is no doubt, and especially leadership, Chris Paul is one of the best in the game. And yes, he is a little bit older. I want to say he's like 35, 36 now, but he is going to be a fantastic fit with this up-and-coming Phoenix Suns team, by the way, that, again, they were the only team, they went undefeated in the bubble, by the way. Somehow still didn't make it to the playoffs despite going undefeated in the bubble, but they went 8-0 in the bubble. Devin Booker, he is one of the best rising stars in the league, absolutely. This is a guy that scores 50, 60 points some games, and it seems like he could do it when he feels like he needs to. And having a leader in Chris Paul, they're going to be a decent contender. I'm not going to sit here and say they're going to be a championship contender, but it definitely is a huge boost for them.
Yeah, definitely. And especially coming out of that bubble, as you mentioned. So quite a bit of momentum potentially for Phoenix heading into the upcoming season. But this week, too, I've been reading about James Harden requesting to be traded from Houston. What have been some of like your biggest surprises as you've been tracking, I know, on free agency this week and trades as well?
Well, Houston's going through a couple things, right? Because not only is it James Harden, but even Russell Westbrook has made it very clear
Yeah.
that he wants out of there too. So Houston is exploding. I guess you could say they're definitely getting to a point where they're going to start having to rebuild. D'Antoni, their coach, of course, left after the season and is no longer part of the team either. So, mixture of that, I'm sure, is part of it. I know Harden did like playing for D'Antoni quite a bit. Yeah, I mean, when it comes to James Harden, you talk about a player that, again, going back to this conversation of flopping, or there's certain people that just don't like some of these players for reasons, and I understand. I do actually like James Harden a lot, and I respect his game and what he does to get the buckets, but also the fact that he's a great teammate, a lot better teammate than I think people give him credit for. I mean, the dude leads the NBA in assists, and he still gets slack for shooting too much, some way, somehow. So, yeah. Well, what about your take though on the Harden and Westbrook, even in the whole Houston situation?
Well, my biggest disappointment is that we didn't name this segment Houston, We've Got a Problem, because you bring up two of the biggest names in the NBA and they're both trying to get out of there. So it'll be interesting to see where they go. But I think it's going to be pretty quiet on the free agency side this week. What do you think?
Yeah, probably. It's a case of, again, a lot of the free agents, as we discussed last week as well. Free agency, it could be a little deceiving because there are a lot of players that technically can become free agents, but it's ultimately a choice. And in most cases, they do choose to stay with the team. Like Anthony Davis is, of course, the big one. He did opt out of his contract now, so technically he is going to be a free agent, but he'll very likely stay with the Lakers as expected because he's going to get the most money with the Lakers. So I know Andre Drummond, a player that I brought up last week as well, he actually did the same thing. He announced that he's actually staying with the Cleveland Cavaliers. So you are right. When it comes to free agency, I don't really know if many of these really big names are going to necessarily be going different places in the end. So
Yeah, I think you might be right about that. Um, Talking about future talent, tonight's a big night for the NBA with the draft and a couple of pretty big names on the board to be taken. It feels, I don't know, everything that I've been hearing, everything that I've been reading. there's three names that are sticking out in terms
Yeah.
of going 1, 2, 3. But the Minnesota Timberwolves with the first pick in the NBA draft tonight, and they haven't exactly said or implied what direction they'll be going, but a lot of people seem to think that LaMelo Ball will be the first overall pick tonight.
Yeah, so the three names that you're talking about, LaMelo Ball, of course, probably the most popular name for obvious reasons. He's part of the Ball family. Lonzo yeah, right. No, it's his dad definitely doesn't say anything on social media. Yeah, no, it's it now.
Quiet family.
Yeah. Now Lonzo, I'll say this about Lonzo Ball, the one that currently plays for the Pelicans now. Again, there was that situation with his father making him this biggest deal ever. He honestly wasn't and is a pretty legit player. It's unfortunate that he had to deal with that, a lot of the media criticism and everything, but he has actually proved to be a very effective player. LaMelo Ball, I've heard rumor, is supposed to even be better than Lonzo Ball. This is his youngest brother. So he's been playing international. Again, I really haven't watched much, if any, of him, but from what I've been hearing, it certainly seems like he could be a great fit for somewhere like Minnesota or wherever he ends up going. But the other two names are Anthony Edwards out of Georgia, and then you have James Wiseman as well, who's the big guy, 7'1" player right there. So those are the top three that are very likely expected. Again, the two of them playing NCAA, but one actually was ineligible after 3 games, James Wiseman, and then
that was a short-lived career at Memphis.
Well, yeah, it's like, I guess he played in college. Yeah, the whole 1-year rule is a whole nother topic, but it's I think I brought this up last week as well. This draft, I don't want to underrate it, but it doesn't necessarily have that great a hype that we've had before. But COVID is part of that too, unfortunately. But yeah, those are the big three that we need to look forward to.
Yeah, it looks like LaMelo, potentially Minnesota, and then Golden State. Who knows who they'll go with? But James Wiseman, Anthony Edwards, certainly the big names, and then Charlotte with that third pick. So those three teams very likely to get a good addition to their organizations later this evening.
Yeah, well, Golden State, I mean, what do you think about Golden State having the number 2 pick and how that could affect things with that team, right? Like that's...
Yeah, and it's interesting when you look at James Wiseman, and he definitely brings good size, but he's not necessarily like that superstar addition to your roster. He's gonna, be a guy that kind of can help out the stars, I think, on both the offense and defensive side of the ball. So he's just kind of a good complementary player, but I don't think he's a name that you're bringing to be the marquee guy. Mm-hmm. But he could be a good addition in San Francisco for sure.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. The length there is something like they're not lacking on guard talent, that's for sure. In Golden State, so I think they're pretty set there. But yeah, James Wiseman is. I would expect him, if he's not the number 1 pick, to go to Golden State as well. So.
Well, and it's actually interesting because if James Wiseman does go to Golden State, that leaves the Hornets potentially with Anthony Edwards, and they could definitely use a guy like Edwards who can be a lethal shooter. They don't really have somebody that can knock down the long-range shot and be a real threat on the perimeter. So he could be a really good fit in Charlotte as well. So will be interesting, and I'm sure people will be tuning in because it's Wednesday night, and what other sports are on Wednesday night? So
it's funny. It's funny you bring up Charlotte specific because they seriously, to me, are one of those almost like forgotten franchises. I'm going to be blunt about it. Like, you think of me like there's. When it comes to just people that are rooting for I wouldn't be surprised if they're on the lower end of a fan base, unfortunately. But because they even went through a phase where they were the Charlotte Bobcats for a while, right? Where they changed their name for a couple of years, and then they randomly went back to the Hornets. It's like, oh, when the hell did this happen? Like the biggest thing I know about them is Michael Jordan is the owner. Yeah, so it's like I honestly could not name a player on the team right now off the top of my head. I'd have to look it up. So.
Well, it's like interesting that you say that because automatically, I guess you think when Michael Jordan is associated with anything, it's not usually something that like flies under the radar. He's
right,
a pretty impactful figure, especially in the basketball world. So that is really interesting. But who knows, Breaky? Maybe this will be the year. Maybe the draft just changes
their potential
future. Alrighty, busy week in the NBA, but let's go back and talk about the NFL a little bit because speaking of the draft, we're 10 weeks through the NFL season, and COVID has definitely made this a really strange year, especially at the college level. Some conferences playing like 7 games, others trying to play a more full schedule, but nonetheless, just kind of a different year probably when it comes to evaluating talent. So it'll be interesting to see kind of how the spring rolls on after the season ends with combines and pro days and how those are impacted as well. But all eyes this year when it comes to the NFL draft seem to be on Trevor Lawrence out of Clemson. In fact, a couple of quarterbacks that could go pretty high. But any like players that are on your radar, I guess, when you look ahead to the NFL draft coming up early next year?
Not necessarily. Again, Trevor Lawrence is, of course, a big name. Fields out of Ohio State. He's certainly another one. The quarterback, you mentioned a couple of quarterbacks there. But to your point about it's as everything is right now in the sports world or just in life in general, we're kind of going through these unique situations, and yeah, with them playing all these different amount of games, and I know in some player like there's I'm blanking on his name right now, but a receiver out of Minnesota, he was like projected to be a top 10 pick, I believe, in the upcoming NFL draft, and initially he announced he's not playing this season. Because of COVID and everything. But then the Big Ten announced that they're actually going to be playing, and suddenly he's like, actually, okay, if that's the case, and he saw how things were playing out, I might as well play now. So there are some players that are just flat out sitting out altogether still, but, in a case like his, he decided, okay, I'll just give it a go and at least show a little bit more of what I can do on the field. But, yeah, so it's when it comes to being teams looking for players that they want to draft and a scouting role in general, this is definitely going to be one of the toughest years for them to try to find, that piece that fits your team perfectly.
So the big question is, do you think that, and we had this poll question either last week or the week before, will the Jets continue their perfect losing record here? But do you think at the end of the day that happens and that Trevor Lawrence ends up in New York?
I do. It's like, part of me, I feel bad for somebody like Trevor Lawrence, but I'll say this. As somebody that was a San Diego Chargers fan and knows the pain, I guess you could say, or like the hurt when a quarterback tells you to F off, basically, and he doesn't want to play for you, that you were going to be picking number 1, a.k.a. Mr. Eli Manning, though I have opinions and I'm going to leave off the table on him. I understand what a Jets fan would be going through in terms of wondering if that's going to happen. Now, Trevor Lawrence doesn't seem like the kind of guy, he truly doesn't seem like the kind of guy that would do anything like that. So it kind of goes to that point. Like, if he feels like a kind of guy that, whoever drafts me, I'm going to play, kind of like Burrow was last year. And as the Jets personnel looking for somebody to join their team, I mean, how can you not? Trevor Lawrence, he really does seem like one of these one in a generation almost kind of talents when it comes to being able to run, when it comes to looking at the field, to making the right passes. He's obviously has experience, has played at the highest level already, at least in his collegiate career. So absolutely, I do see him ending up with the Jets.
But then you have Jacksonville fans who are like, come on, why can't we get the first pick in the NFL draft? Because seemingly they will be looking for a quarterback as well. And I'm disappointed that mustache mania or whatever it's called isn't working out down there, because Gardner Minshew, like, such a fun college career to watch. Obviously at Washington State, I think him and Mike Leach might have been like the most entertaining combination out there with quarterback and a coach. But fun fact, prior to that, he was actually at ECU, which is my alma mater. Shout out Pirates. So yeah, Gardner Minshew kind of like made his way from North Carolina out to Washington State, and I was kind of rooting for him. And he's very entertaining. He's got a good, he's got a fun personality. But I think that it's turning out that he may not be the end. The end guy.
Well, he's still. This is the crazy thing to me when it comes to having these conversations, because we're so spoiled when it comes to very young quarterbacks that have happened to do very well, aka Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson specifically, the back-to-back MVPs of the most recent seasons, very young players that play that quarterback role. So the expectations definitely feel a lot more for teams, especially that are drafting, number one, number two, whatever it is, very early on in the draft, to be like, you got to make the play now in the first couple of years, or we're done with you. So a player like Gardner Minshew, for example, as you're going at, not necessarily now, he wasn't necessarily, very pressured in terms of being a very high draft pick, but still, he's given the reins. He's still a very young player in the end. So I guess the point I'm getting at is that I still think he could have potentially a career, even if Jacksonville does choose to move on from him right now. But we'll see. I mean, hey, being a career backup isn't necessarily the worst thing either, honestly.
Hey, that could be the best position. That could be like the best spot on the team.
Yeah.
I mean, I would do it.
In some ways, it can be. Yeah, and then that starting quarterback goes down. You're like, wait, I have to actually play now. Ah, crap. Yeah.
Exactly. Speaking of young quarterbacks, we saw a couple of them face off this past weekend, Bills and the Cardinals. And like, what a strange game that was. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that one, but Bills get a pretty good first half lead going and then lose all momentum in the second half. But Josh Allen, the Bills quarterback, speaking of a quarterback that has high expectations, he certainly does. And he was able to lead his team back to this like crazy comeback at the end of the game to take the lead. Throws this incredible pass to Stephon Diggs in the end zone. Buffalo thinks they are going to like sneak out of Glendale with the win, which would have been huge. And then Kyler Murray was not done yet because he throws up this Hail Mary into the end zone for DeAndre Hopkins. And I mean, I still like don't understand how he caught it. There was like 3 Buffalo guys surrounding him and he just got up there above them all. It was pretty incredible. But like such a fun game to watch, and 2 young quarterbacks that we're probably going to be watching for a very long time.
Yeah. Josh Allen, I know I've said this before on this show. He is very entertaining to watch, and I look forward to continue to watch more of him with Buffalo and their success. And yeah, it's clearly showing even in this losing effort that they certainly have a bright future and continue to do so. But yeah, Kyler Murray throwing to Hopkins. I mean, I'm with you. Any Hail Mary play that actually connects, you're kind of just like, wait, did that really just happen? How did the defense not knock the ball down? I will say this was one of the more, like, I don't think any of the defenders did anything wrong. They all jumped up together. They didn't necessarily not try to swat the ball. It's just Hopkins with those freaking mitts of his that some way, somehow he always ends up doing. He just latched on, and he was not letting go of that football. So, by the way, Houston traded him for a draft pick, just saying. Like, that's a whole nother topic that's been once again reiterated. Still absolutely insane to think about. Too soon. Yeah, right. Kind of on a personal note, though, I actually have had the chance to be at a game that actually had a similar moment. It was Detroit, in fact, about 3 years ago now, versus Green Bay. Not Brett Favre. Wow, that went way long ago. Really long ago. I'm old here. No. Aaron Rodgers. It came down to the very end, and he had to lob a 60-yard pass into the end zone, and sure enough, Green Bay came down with the ball, and they won the game because of that. So I just remember that in the moment reaction of, oh, did that just happen? The hands on the head, like, what just happened? So it must be nice being a home team and being able to experience that thrill.
I feel like whenever those Hail Marys happen, especially in today's age, usually social media leaves with some excellent memes. Like, those are my favorite. Just like the people in the stands that just look so sad and they're so stunned. And then, I mean, you just see them. They like live on forever. It's pretty great.
Yeah, it was a cool moment for sure. It was definitely a highlight, the best play of the season, and will probably be it throughout it. So
yeah, no, definitely. And like the crazy part about it was that the touchdown before that the Bills scored, I mean, that Stephon Diggs catch in the end zone was like a total highlight reel play. Like, you're like, wow, that was incredible.
Oh yeah.
And it only was exciting for few seconds because then their dreams were crushed.
You know what's kind of funny too is if people saw as well, that was impactful for both of us with our fantasies because you have Diggs and I have Hopkins, so it did kind of swing a little bit there, and that actually gave me hope going into the Monday night game. That was quickly crushed and didn't matter.
Or, we canceled each other out a little bit with that.
Sure.
But that game with the Cardinals winning that game, they ended up moving to 6-3. And it's pretty crazy right now in that NFC West. And so, especially if you haven't voted yet in our poll, please do so because we'll get to that here in a second. But the NFC West, 3 teams sit at 6-3: Cardinals, Seahawks, and the Rams. So moving forward, that is going to be it's going to be pretty crazy because when you think of those 3 teams at this point, you're like, wow, they probably all deserve to be in the playoffs. But 2 of those teams are going to be fighting for wild card spots. So it's definitely shaping up to be a really competitive division. And the Seahawks have lost 2 in a row. So it's getting pretty interesting.
Yeah, Seahawks. I mean, we knew going into this season, especially, that the NFC West, as it's tend to have been these last couple of years, really is going to be one of the toughest, if not the toughest division. So it's not surprising to me to see it so close at this point. I guess the one little surprise is San Francisco is on the bottom at a 4-6 record. They are the reigning NFC champions after all, but they're dealing with one of the most crazy amount of injuries that we've seen in recent history with right off the bat of the season. So understandable. They're still 4-6 though. I mean, again, only 2 games back, despite that is actually kind of crazy in itself, but definitely not the NFC East.
Too hard on the Seahawks here early in, in the beginning of our streams here.
Oh, sure.
I think day one I went all in on the Seahawks and Russell Wilson MVP. No one is taking this away from him. They pretty much had it sealed, and so I apologize, Seahawks.
Yeah, I mean, it's been some close games in their losses, right? So yes, they've lost 2 in a row, but definitely some close ones there. I mean, I still think it's a very worthy NFC pick at least to be in the Super Bowl. But yeah, it's going to be a tough run. Now, obviously, 7 teams now make it out of each conference as well, worth noting. So I guess, could there be a scenario where all 4 teams make it? Is that actually possible?
I guess technically, if you have all 3 teams, I mean, there's 3 wild card spots in each division. So I guess technically you could, but I can't.
I can't imagine that happening. But let's just take away the NFC East title, and the first place doesn't matter there. So just give it to the NFC West, right? That's what we should really be doing. God, that division's so awful. Just even looking at this now, Philadelphia's 3-5-1 in first place.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that.
You got an ad running or something?
I did. I had a fun pop-up ad. I'm like, what is this new music that you're playing? Because I can't hear you. But
I was just talking about how bad the NFC East was.
Yes, it's pretty bad. But at the end, at the end of it, if you weren't guaranteed that first place team out of that group, in theory, none of them would.
Oh yeah, and they don't deserve it. I mean, I think that's a fair answer. They just don't deserve it. I don't see what's wrong with that. No, obviously, those fan bases would have a completely different opinion on that, but it's ridiculous to me that it reminds me of. Speaking of, wasn't it Seattle? God, they had a 9-7 record at the end, and they hosted the playoff game because they won their division. So we've had some instances before that have been like, do they really deserve this? But it's going to happen.
Fair,
life's not fair sometimes. Yeah.
Life is not fair. Exactly. Just go back to basic principles. But these are the rules, and it's definitely. I think it's going to be a really fun playoff season. I think maybe we were all looking forward to football a little bit more this year because we had this fear of it being taken away from us. So the fact that it actually came, and we're watching games on Sundays and Mondays and Thursdays, and like it's all actually playing out, and we're getting to see some pretty good games and some awesome talent. And I think um, it's made it just even like us appreciate it that much more. But I think we're gonna have some just like really really competitive playoff games. So I'm excited for it
Yeah,
to get
and
to that point. But
the Lions are giving me just enough hope. They do this all the time. Just enough hope to be like, you know what, you could still think there's a chance. They're 2 games back. I guess 2.5 technically back. 3 out of first place, but out of the wild card spot, they could go on a run here to the end of the season. And
keep hoping, keep hoping.
I
Well,
hate how they
the
do this.
Ultimate Rivals community will be here for you.
Yes.
When it comes time. Um, let's go back to our poll. Have we had anyone chime in?
Let's see here. Yes, we have. Not the most votes, but we got some data to work with.
Hey, we'll take it.
We will. Okay, here, actually, let me vote mine. There we go. Okay, so we got the 6 votes in total, but the Ravens Titans actually standing out as the most popular one. Oh, updated slightly there. Votes coming in as we speak. But yeah, still the Ravens Titans. Ravens and Titans getting that first place spot. You got the Cardinals Seahawks just behind them, and then a couple of people think the Chiefs Raiders and the Rams Bucks are also the ones to watch. But so the
Which
Ravens
one did you go
Titans.
for? I didn't see.
I did the Cardinals Seahawks.
Oh,
The
that's
NFC
my
West
pick.
here.
Cool.
Oh, so you and I agree on that. Okay, so we were the couple there. But clearly others disagree, and that the Ravens Titans for me, that was actually it was tough. It was between those 2 games because I am somewhat of a Titans fan as well, because of a couple of players that they have on there, and I like their style of play, especially with Derrick Henry running the ball, and that we're just going to run you over kind of play style, which you don't see a lot nowadays in the NFL. I mean, yeah, that's going to be a good game too. But I think with the Cardinals and the Seahawks, that in-division rival, and them being so close, and obviously the same record even as we were just talking about, there's a lot of hype on that one.
Yeah, it was a tough decision. So naturally, I went kind of game by game and put like way too much thought into it. But I have some reasons for why I'm looking forward to the Cardinals and the Seahawks. My first reason is that I think it's going to be a really fun like battle of the quarterbacks. We have Kyler Murray and Russell Wilson. They're both like incredible athletes, and they both played college baseball, which I think is awesome. So I think when you like look at that, both of them were rookies of the year in their first seasons in the NFL. But I think that the Seahawks 2-game losing streak, I think it ends tomorrow night, because I don't think that Russell Wilson is going to let this second-year quarterback come into Seattle and take this one from him. I think that the Cardinals are going to be riding pretty high. I think they've had a lot of like energy exhausted after how that game ended last Sunday. So I think the Seahawks are going to win this one. But I think it's going to be really just like the best display of like quarterback competition that we'll see throughout the year. So that's my reason.
Was clarified. It is in Seattle. Again, not that home field advantage matters as much this year.
Where's the fans when you need them, right? That's like the death place to go play.
Well, so I assume Seattle, they're not allowing fans still, because obviously there are some stadiums that do, some depending on the state, of course, that you live in. So we've seen some. In fact, Arizona, I think I remember, when they were doing the celebration, there was definitely fans in the stadium.
They were all lined up very perfectly in each section. It's honestly like kind of fascinating when you look at the like overhead view of each stadium and how perfectly, like it looks very, people are doing a good job. They're like single file lined up and down these stadiums. But yeah, I don't know if Seattle's letting fans in. That would definitely be interesting to look up. But there's also part of me that's like, is it really the 12th man if it's not sold out? So
well, I clicked on Ticketmaster and it said event cannot be found. So I'm gonna guess that there's no 12th man there for Seattle. But I mean, I think the logic is still very sound that you're giving for that matchup specifically, certainly. So yeah, interesting though. Yeah, I actually wasn't aware that Russell Wilson was the rookie of the year in his year as well.
Yeah,
makes sense.
I think it was like maybe I want to say like 2012, maybe
So long
around
ago.
eternity ago.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's like I think that they've got like similar styles in that sense. I think that's gonna be fun. But you had mentioned Ravens and the Titans. Um, for the Ravens, I think this game is like particularly important because with the Ravens being right behind the Steelers, who have still yet to lose a game, right
Yeah.
now, like they are most likely battling for that wild card spot. So they definitely need this win.
Yeah. There's a lot of
Yeah,
6-3 teams, including Baltimore, in the AFC in general. So yeah, that kind of goes to your point that they absolutely need to win, if anything, for the wild card contention spot.
yeah, for sure. Alrighty. Well, to close out our stream today, we're going to go back to NBA theme. And we like to highlight an athlete in Ultimate Rivals each week, just so fans and people who are playing the game can get a feel for some of the options at their disposal as they continue to unlock players in Ultimate Rivals, the rank. So this week we're going to highlight James Harden, who is a Houston Rocket for now.
may have
We'll
to update
see.
that jersey.
Yes, but for now, he is a Rocket. And Breaky, what are some of the advantages to having James Harden playing ice hockey for your team?
Well, he, of course, being a basketball player, skating on the ice there, he does bring the basketball ultimate, which took me a while, and I think it's the one for a lot of players that it'll take them a while to kind of get used to and adapt to and realize how truly effective it can be. But pairing it with something like baseball, soccer, whatever, something that can knock people out, you activate basketball ultimate, you activate the other one, you knock them out, you get 3 points for making a 3-point goal with the fire arc that comes out. So, in my opinion, that's one of the strongest ways to make use of the basketball ultimate. It's also a great comeback mechanic. If you happen to be down a couple goals, score a 3-pointer, all of a sudden you're in the lead. Yeah.
I have been down a few goals before, and so this one is my favorite.
So, individually as a player, understandably, and I think we did a great job of actually, bringing this over to a hockey world. He's a fantastic shooter, a fantastic passer, which he certainly is on the court, and then deking as well. He's actually up there as well. So top speed, maybe not the fastest player, which I think is relatable for him, and defense is definitely on the lower end, which, again, James Harden is certainly not known for his defense, so I like to see all that there. But yeah, when you look for somebody to score, specifically in that wing position, I think that's where he will shine the most for you as an option to choose.
All right, cool. Well, make sure to check out James Harden, Houston Rockets, if you're playing Ultimate Rivals, the rink. That brings us to a close here on Ultimate Rivals Sports Talk. Make sure to join Breaky tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern on Twitch as well. He's going to be playing Ultimate Rivals. So, of course, if you want to keep mastering this craft, that's a great place to go and hang out with Breaky, keep him some company, ask him some questions on the stream. So, thanks so much for tuning in, and we'll see you back here on Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern.
See ya.